Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Party Talk podcast, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. I'm your host, Jake White, and today we've got a special guest. We've got Mr. Jacques from the Canada, from up north. I'm not even going to try and
Canada.
That definitely wasn't a real accent or anything, but I'll catch on as we go, Jacques.
Yeah. I'm up here in Canada, and I initially got started in my career as the party scientist, focusing on binge drinking research at my university. So we have such a common origin story. I imagine, Jake.
Jacques, before you get going, okay, we have to do this. So we've known each other for years. Our paths have been running parallel to each other, and the only difference is we're just across the border from each other. Like,
That's right.
I'm just going to set it up like this, but please, like, I've looked across at all your stuff and then, dude, I want to be Jacques. Like, that's who I want to be. You're throwing events, you're having fun, like, your life is such an adventure. So I just wanted to tease that up. Now, please.
I think you're referring to my sober party expeditions across the world.
Yeah, because you're going to see, listen, for everyone who is listening or watching this, you're going to see like how insane our paths are. And the fact that like, even when we met, it was scary how similar we were. And then all the way through, we would call to catch up probably like once a year or once every year and a half. And we're like, wait, you did what? I did that. You did what? I did. And so, I mean, let's reminisce. Let's tell the story a little bit. And then I want to dive in because you are kind of the subject matter expert on joy and producing it without drugs and alcohol. Like if I could put it in my simple terms of why I love what you do, that's what I would say. But let's, I think that's going to be awesome for people to hear about. Jacques, take us, what do you remember on like the time when we got connected and what you were doing? We want to hear all about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the huge commonality is we loved bringing people together. We loved getting young people to socialize differently and connect more meaningfully and go out of their comfort zones without drugs or alcohol. And I was running a group called Party for Health. And the idea was, how do I reframe partying as a health habit? And how do I show people that there's this alternative that exists that is really like a natural antidepressant? It nourishes all aspects of our well-being, right? Our mental, physical health, down to like our inflammatory markers, right? This is the power of human connection. And yet, when I was at UBC studying binge drinking, I just saw again and again, and I was a medic at festivals as well, and I saved a bunch of young people's lives from drug overdoses. Point is, I was
festivals, like music.
Yeah, music festivals. That's right. One of which, ironically, everyone's gonna disapprove of this name. The festival was called Faded.
Oh no!
The whole festival for 20,000 kids. So I was obsessed with researching party design. And so I think I discovered you, and our first call, we just couldn't stop talking about the events that we were doing, right? We started with events, and I still do that. Like I believe that community is the greatest, predictor of our well-being. So events is what I do for fun, but then I do speaking. I'm kind of trailing in your footsteps. The speaking career now.
Yeah.
But yeah, is that how you remember it?
Yeah. Okay, that's how I remember it, and I didn't remember the details. So what I'm pulling out right now, which is so funny. All right, you're Party for Health. I was Party 0.0, Party 0.0.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the name right there, that's going to tease you a little bit. Like, that's kind of funny. And we were throwing drug-free events, emphasizing, like you said, human connection. And my whole thing was like, hey, give students an opportunity to socialize without drugs and alcohol. And they're taking it. They're enjoying it as long as they leave with one new friend and one new experience, which is that's what you did as well. It was, and I'll let you get to the part of the story, but at some point, I remember you taking this and you could show up to any place. Like in my mind, watching you is like if Jacques showed up at the grocery store, he could throw a party and everyone there would be connecting and meeting each other and having an amazing time. Like that is my view of you, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. So what you're referring to is the tours I've done where I've developed this skill of bringing people together wherever I am, putting myself out there and getting strangers celebrating, high-fiving, smiling, laughing together. And so I did this across Europe. I did this in Central America, and it shatters people's perceptions of like social norms, right? And this is something, that I learned about when I attended a conference in Portland about drug and alcohol prevention is social norms in your school, social norms at your university, and how we misperceive social norms, and it results in, more drug and alcohol consumption. So social norms, I figured out as I traveled with this giant speaker, in I say this embarrassingly, but I used to wear a banana suit. Because the idea was everyone would stop and wonder what was going on. And everyone would say to themselves, well, I can't look like an idiot as much as that guy, so I'll participate. So traveled around the world and I developed these skills that I think, every student, every human can develop, these skills of taking social risks, of reaching out to people, and creating these joyful interactions. And I also developed the skill of just like leading with joy. Like I figured out a way to create joy within myself, and then I would share it with others, until I was leading a parade, right? Like a parade of a few hundred people.
Yes, exactly. Wow. Okay. I love what you said about social norms too, because that is something big that everyone listening here is probably attuned to, and they're wondering how can we use positive social norms, which is what I like to tell people is social norms can be a campaign where you say, hey, the majority of middle school and high school students don't use drugs. But what's missing is the social proof. So what you and I are doing is showing the proof, because I know from doing presentations, you can tell students that there's, majority aren't using. Doesn't mean that they have to believe you. It doesn't mean there's not an inconsistency when, they go to the bathroom and it seems like someone's vaping or smoking or drinking, or at the weekends, the only offers of socializing I got was to go to these parties where drugs and alcohol are. So there's inconsistencies. So we have to show them, like it's not enough to tell them or to have a poster. But what I love about you're doing is like, wait, there's a parade of people validating that social proof, man. So I love it. That's so cool.
I'm really intrigued by this situation. I'm very intrigued, by this whole impact of social media and like shareability, digital content being shared, and how it impacts social norms. And I think it's safe to say that partying, when people are partying, they're primarily showcasing a very normative style of partying. And so I don't think there's a lot of content being shared on these platforms in these friend circles that I'm just pointing out that there's a lot of media out there reinforcing this like, unidimensional way of partying. And there's so much history, and there's so much like big alcohol money, and there's so much behind this powering these connotations of partying that, I've just decided to leave partying behind, really. And I have my own word and my own practice, and I am not trying to change partying because I'm not going to beat the forces at play. And that's where vibing comes in. That's where vibing comes in. But the point I'm making is, we got to acknowledge that there are a lot of forces at play reinforcing the social norms that, good times are associated with alcohol. Like there's a very solid thing there. And so what I'm more interested in, I don't want to change the old. I want to just create something new and shape it however I want. And that's really like my life purpose, is to invent just a whole new way of celebrating life. And that doesn't involve alcohol. And that involves really intentional, courageous ways of connecting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why that's so genius too is because if you tell someone not to do something, right? Hey, Jacques, don't think about an elephant right now. Stop. Don't think about an elephant. Your brain can't create an image for don't. It creates an image for elephant. So you're saying, hey, if you want to reduce drug use and alcohol use, it's better to focus on building a healthy mind and body and creating something new, which again, this is in our path. This is the coolest thing. We have a phone conversation a couple of years back, and he tells me about this vibing movement that he's starting, and he's changing his name. I'm like, dude, I just changed my name and it's called Vibe 18. And this is probably like a year and a half, 2 years since we last, and we're like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. But we're on the same mission. I don't care. You can call each other whatever we want. I will always I want people vibing every day. I'm a part of your movement. But this was, again, part of us like reconnecting. It's so funny. I love what your posture was like, I'm creating something new. And my posture was, well, I'm starting to speak to younger audiences. The people who are hiring us to come work with them, schools, principals, drug-free communities, they don't want to use the word party because of those negative connotations. It is such a big task to redefine the word. I never thought of it like that, like what you did. It's like, hey, billions of dollars are going into reinforcing the way you party is with alcohol and these drugs. So in order to combat that, I'm going to have to come up with billions of dollars of budget. No way. All right, cool. Let's create something new. I love the way that you put that. Whereas for mine, I had to just realize they don't want to buy my speech anymore. They don't want to buy my because it has negative connotations. And the way it was put to me simply was, Jake, even if you party without drugs and alcohol, our principals don't want to think about their students partying at all. You need to change that name. And I was like, I do,
It's so interesting because, like, I'm sure those principles, I think it's there's introverts out there who've had negative experiences partying, and I've had negative experiences partying, but really, like, one of the greatest joys I've discovered in life is coming into a relaxed social environment where people are able to express joy for, like, no real reason, just to be joyful and get out of, like, talking. And so what I'm saying is, it's funny because I really think, most people have had a really positive experience partying and do really enjoy being around accepting, fun people that are joyful. So partying is this, like, very fun thing to do for most people. And yet there's this, like, let's keep it under the rug that we, that we enjoy, like, celebrating and, being relaxed with our people. Like, it's a very human thing. It's very human nature. Like, we've been shaped as a tribal, as a species that comes together in units. And one of the ways that we socially bonded was through movement and through rhythm, right? Rhythm is actually a big piece. Rhythm in song, rhythm in movement was a huge factor in early civilization. So I just think, I think that Yeah, the issue is that this very healthy behavior has been co-opted by like capitalistic systems um, that just facilitate as much consumption as possible, and it wipes out all the health benefits.
Right. Oh, I can't argue with that. That's it's definitely, you can tell focused on the money when your product really like leads to so much destruction and death and school dropouts, date rapes, like all the things that happen through overconsumption. Yet it's marketed as if yes, you need this to function, whether you want to celebrate, whether you want to relieve stress, if you're having a good day, bad day, like you fail a test, you do great on a test. It's like they want you to make things every holiday, every date, after work, right? So like there's so many instances they want to trigger this use of their product. And the sad thing is like it's really good marketing. They're fantastic at it. They hire really smart people. But I actually, so I want to talk about what you're doing now. Before I do that, a quick thing for fun. When was it that you were doing your like tour where you're touring Europe and Central America? Year it was?
Done multiple tours, so
okay.
I would say the most the tour that I look back on and I wonder how it was possible was in 2019, and that tour, I just look back on those videos and I'm so inspired by my past self because the risks that I took and like what I was able to do, possibly because I was so naive. That was in 2019, but I also traveled for 8 months in 2022, but that wasn't focused on what I was doing earlier, which was I'm going to go out in public and I am going to ignite joy in public.
Yeah,
2019.
Okay, I was gonna see if that lined up for us as well, because there was the tour that I did with where we'd show up at colleges and throw sober house parties. And yeah, I don't even know. Do you remember me telling you about that? We lived in a train.
Oh yeah.
For
Oh my God.
Go into town, try to pull it off in a week. And I agree with you. There was like this, it was a naivety, and it was also was just like a Hail Mary pass. You know, I was like, does this thing actually work? Is it worth pursuing? I haven't figured out our business model yet, you know, and was trying like, all right, what can we do to just validate this to see if I should keep going? And I think like that was just such a crazy experience doing that.
Gosh.
And like most of it was a failure, right? Like, but we did validate the idea and we learned what mistakes that we needed to overcome. And so since then though, right? Like, all right, all those fun adventures served its purpose. And now we're kind of adulting pretty hard, right? Like
I'm really curious to hear what was an instance of failure during that trip. I'm so curious if some of the events just flopped and what did you do to save the event?
It'd be a shorter story if I told you a success, but I'm a fan of the real and the raw. So like 3/4 of the states that we visited, our goal was set up shop for a week, get to know this town, campus, meet people, throw a party, right? Which is huge to do in a week. I don't know how I thought we could do this. And we went and we only really had success in like a couple states, like Louisiana, Texas, Indiana, Mississippi. And they were luckily like it was big name schools. So we created some momentum. I think even Alabama was okay. But the fail points were like, man, we didn't meet a single person who said, what you're doing is incredible. They're like, wait, you're doing what? You just showed up here and you're going to throw a party? That is so weird. Who are you working for? What are you doing? And it was so weird. And that was the funny thing. That was from the administrators. Like,
okay,
the ones that should be excited because we're going to solve a problem on their campus. We're going to create a grassroots movement and improve their school culture. but they had never heard of it before. They'd never seen it. We didn't do any marketing. We didn't.
Oh my gosh.
It was so bad. But some of the other things like so when we were in Mississippi State, we threw a great party, but during one of our games, my wife Emily got a concussion. It was bad, dude. So this game called what is it called? Not Hammerschlagen, Stump. It's called Stump. You flip a hammer. By the way, we played this completely sober. I don't understand how people would play it drinking. It sounds terrifying. But you flip a hammer in front of you, and then you have to hit a nail down on this stump. And every player has a nail. You want yours to be the last one standing. So when I flip the hammer and catch it, I got to hit someone else's nail. So this game is like a hit everywhere. In Wisconsin, people stay out like till it's 35 degrees outside. They're playing this game. They don't care. But one of the kids is super uncoordinated. You get more points if you try to toss it behind your back and then catch it. You get 3 hits at an opponent's nail. And so this kid is not coordinated. Like, he just tosses it behind its back. And Emily's over here. It just goes straight into her head. And instantly it was like, we knew, oh my gosh, you got a concussion. So we drove her home to rest, to go get checked up by the doctor. And it was such a bummer for such a great day for her to end up like one of our few successes on the tour was like, got cut short by that. That was a super bummer. But dude, we like lived in a trailer, parked it outside a parking lot, brushed our teeth, in grocery stores and YMCAs and stuff like that. Like, it was just a wild time. So most of it was just failing and doing crazy stuff. But the few times that it worked was cool, and it helped us learn why it works and why it does it. But
the curiosity I have is this grassroots movement. Like, it is possible to do that. There are groups that find a way to just create this contagious word of mouth phenomenon for a party, and they leverage, mystery, and like, it's totally offline. And I'm so curious about this form of community building, and it never has to do with the higher ups. It's the same with workplaces, right? Things that just get forced down from the top. Like, it's just the brand of the initiative gets impacted because it's coming from the top, versus if it's coming from the bottom, it's like, oh, this could actually be something useful, and we're choosing to do this. So I'm like, and I think this has some insight for changing social norms. I think that if we tell people the social norms, it's very different than nudging or getting the people, the actual users, leveraging the users to change the social norms and to be leaders, as opposed to someone distant who's unrelatable, who's an administrator, who's following all these rules. So yeah, I'm really curious about that. And my events here in the city now are all through text messages. I don't do any email. I don't do any marketing. It's all underground. It's all word of mouth, and it's all about vibing. It's communicated, but I'm still definitely a dictator.
Well, I mean, you hit it on the head. It's like, you have to find that local champion who believes in it, and it's coming from someone who's part of this group, part of this movement, is not an outsider. So like, spreading anything is, you need that local champion. And that was the thing of like, when we didn't have one, we failed. When we did have one, we succeeded every time. And it didn't matter whether the champion was like some charismatic person like you or I who loves to be around people, or if it was this shy little person who like didn't seem to have a lot of social skills. They still pulled it off. They're offering acceptance and belonging and joy with no strings attached. And so people will come check it out. And I love what you said, which is like the word of mouth and the text message. That's what works, because that's what friends, like real friends and connections, do. Like, if I wanted a friend to come to my house for dinner, I would not put a poster up. I would not post it on social media. I'm going to communicate with them like a friend does. And that's works. Like it's impactful and makes sense. So tell me more about what you're doing now, like these live experiences.
Yeah,
What it looks like, and then maybe how you work with organizations. Like, I want to hear everything.
totally. I first would love to ask you, based on that tour experience, do you have any advice for everyone listening and me to create joyful experiences in groups of people? I'm curious, like if you were to summarize it in one tip for creating sober events, what might you say? Yeah.
Right. Besides bringing you and I in to talk about it, like this is what I would say is you're looking to create an environment that leaves people with one new friend and one new experience. That means that you leave the first impression. It cannot be left to chance.
Yeah.
Impression. So when someone comes in the door, immediately the experience that they have is they are involved in a game and they are meeting new people. That's like the number one mistake I see is we assume we hosted this event. We've got all these decorations, all these games, all these things to do, but we haven't facilitated how we're going to ease a guest into that experience. That's when, like, man, you spent a lot of time and money, but you still failed because you failed to realize that somebody walking into a new experience needs a little guide. They need a person to bring them in.
They need a host.
They need a host, man. That's a good way to put it. Like,
Yeah.
Would you agree? Or do you have one that you're like super on? You're like, hey, what do you think?
I think what you're describing is beginning someone's an experience with inclusion and with this concept of psychological safety. I am welcome here. I am accepted. I can express myself. I can laugh. People are positive, right? So that, none of this is the hilarity of conferences. It's not designed for human connection at all. Designed for commerce, right? So I love what you're emphasizing because the very first the first 15 minutes of the event, if you haven't established this sense of safety and community and belonging, and you haven't made people feel welcome, and you haven't brought the people who showed up alone in, then everything else after that doesn't stick. So nothing will stick unless you do what you're saying. So I think it's really important to just front load all that, all those social technologies, front load the social technologies, get people involved, get people connecting, give people structure, and encourage them to connect in a deeper, like more emotional way, not just sadness, but joy. And then everything else, the organic interactions afterward are just much more smoother.
Ooh, that's good. And you mentioned that people don't really do it that well in the conference structure, and it's designed for commerce. How would we identify that that's true? How can you tell that it's designed for commerce versus how it's identified for connection?
Yeah, so the experience is mostly unstructured, and the content is delivered in a one-to-many way. So I am on this planet to give leaders tools to use joy to create what they want, which is, belonging, mental health, sense of community, right? And so those tools are not being used at most events. Most events are totally unstructured, and there's no real activity that people are doing to really get them out of social autopilot and get them into a deeper, more human space. So what I advocate for is starting events with some level of structure that gives participants permission to do things they would normally only do when they're drunk, right? How do we create that How do we replace alcohol just with a facilitator or with an activity or with a game? Because like
Yeah.
disinhibition is really easy to create, and same, not only disinhibition, but also like stress relief, right? Like every human body is capable of doing things to relieve stress, to activate joy, to feel safer around other humans, right? We have those tools available to us, and yet people don't use them because this fear that it's might be too out of our guests' comfort zones, or we don't want to force our guests to do anything. So that's my take on it.
Oh, dang, dude, that's good. And it shows that what you're really doing as a facilitator and what you're really doing as somebody who spreads joy is you're getting people to accept the things that they want already. They want to connect, they want to feel included, they want to interact with people, which is mostly for anybody listening. When you talk about a conference and why it was special for you, it's usually because the people that you met, and then your best ideas didn't probably come from a speaker. Like, saying this as a speaker myself, I know when I throw my conferences, I want to have more opportunities for you to talk to each other than for you to listen to me. That's where the ideas come from, because you have all the same issues, all the same challenges, you celebrate different things. So keeping mind of that, like Jack, that's exactly what you're saying, is like, we need to have this one-on-one or like small group experience, not just yes, feed me information, I will write it down, and then it'll go in a notebook later. Or maybe I get one idea that motivates me, but then can I channel that into an experience that I had or new connections and ideas so that action is taken too? So I 100% get it. So you've worked with some pretty incredible festivals, companies, things like that, to help them integrate your model. What's your favorite work that you get to do, or how you partner with organizations?
Yeah, my two focuses right now are a team building, like community board game invention, which is Viving. So it's a new team building activity that's based on the science of joy. And it's in the early stages, but the idea is that, you don't need to hire a facilitator. You don't need to research all the games. You just press play on a TV, on a recording, and it seamlessly facilitates an experience that is like very consistently delivers vitality, belonging, and joy. And so those three things, right? Vitality, belonging, and joy, right? If we can get people into that state, everything else afterward, creative problem solving, social skills, become easier for that participant. So that's kind of one thing that I'm working on, but really what I'm excited about, and the purpose of Viving, the purpose of, my speaking and my workshops, is to equip people with, like, to help them strengthen their joy muscles, and to give them tools to create more joy in their human connections and also in their community interactions. And so, joy is not only a natural antidepressant, but it's also a tool to enhance, like the immune response. It enhances creative problem solving. It enhances our intelligence. And this is all based on organizational psychology, right? Like joy is this not only an end, but it's also a means to so many things we care about. Like we're more productive and more intelligent when we have joy flowing through our body. So what I'm really excited about is not only teaching people how to access joy in a healthy way, right, through human connection, through community connection, but also how do we take advantage of joy, in the workplace, in our leadership. And so that's kind of more what I speak to when I'm at a workplace event or I'm at a conference. But what I'm most excited about is, like how do we like just have more fun and have more joy in how we connect with others. Like that to me, if we develop that skill and we can connect with anybody and be energized by anybody, then life is just so much more fun and it's so much healthier, right?
Uh, okay, I love that for so many reasons, and I'm gonna pull up the practical first, which is because like for me, who's leading youth groups and sessions and conferences and speaking, it's building that cohesive unity. And so I can imagine for me pulling out a vibing exercise when I get together, our student group is going to learn how to, throw sober events and do great work to influence their peers on making healthier decisions. Sweet, let's start with a vibing exercise. Like get them comfortable meeting each other, like spread that joy and connectivity. And I can imagine anybody else who's got a youth club out here, which is probably most of them listening, it's like, cool, like, let me check out this vibing thing. And what I love about your posture is you're such a student. You're a researcher. So talking with you about this is like next level for me, like I got to think a lot about what you're saying because I'm like, oh my gosh, you're relating this to every aspect of the human mind and body, which is, it's just like, okay, cool, I'm sold. Like, let's get on this. Let's do this. How can people learn more about vibing and like check out your resources? I know you're super active on LinkedIn too and publish some awesome articles and stuff, but where should they go to connect with you?
Yeah, I'd recommend that you find me on LinkedIn, and that's where I have my Joy Lab newsletter, where I post content about community building and human connection skills, right? And just to make sure I'm clear, I believe that if we learn certain social skills, we'll have such an abundant source of joy and energy from our social interactions that suddenly we see, okay, alcohol and drugs just inhibit my ability to get this joy from human connection. And so that's really where it comes into the, drug and alcohol prevention is once people have a really healthy source of joy that's just abundant and it comes from their relational intelligence, then it's just like, okay, well, I actually prefer this source of joy. Like this feels a lot better. So I'm going to choose that. I don't need to cope with all this anymore. And I think, the larger question here is how do we solve the loneliness problem on our campuses and in our high schools as well? And that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, The Party Scientist on all platforms. And if you want to receive a free vibing sample exercise, just reach out to me and I'll send it your way. It's really early, so I'd love to figure out how to make this a real practical tool. So I'd love everyone's feedback.
Yeah, well, you're already doing it. And all of the, yeah, dude, our story, how it lines up is just absolutely surreal. I appreciate you so much for being on this and being my friend. It's like, you encourage me so much to keep doing this, man. It is awesome. So for everyone listening to the Party Talk podcast right now, reach out to Jacques, the Party Scientist. Even if you just Google him, you'll find a bunch of great content, articles written, stuff he's been on, and shoot him with some ideas. Like he is a subject matter expert on this. Like this is his field. He's done so much studying. So reach out to him, see how that could be helpful. And in case you haven't been told lately, everyone listening to this, you are lifesavers. You are changing your communities. So keep doing the amazing work that you are. Know you are not alone. And we're going to do so much more together. So we'll see you next Monday for another episode.